The Dukes of Dice are brought to you by Arcane Wonders, Game Toppers, True Love, and listeners like you.
Welcome to the Duchy. It's time for another episode of the Dukes of Dice podcast, a proud member of the Dice Tower Network.
Coming to you from the Duchy of the Duke City, Albuquerque, New Mexico, and the Gateway City, St. Louis, Missouri, it's The Dukes of Dice, a podcast about board, card, and occasionally role-playing games. Today, the Dukes review Football Highlights 2052 from Eagle Gryphon Games. Then they'll be taking a look back at their review of Root from Leader Games in their Dukes Double Take. And now, The Dukes of Dice.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast. This is Sean.
And Alex.
You've got a little extra pep in your and, Alex.
I got love in my heart.
Oh.
Yeah.
Is there some reason for that?
Well, if you're a member of the Dukes of Dice Guild, then you would be well aware of such news. Sean Ramirez, attorney at law.
I'm unfamiliar with of which you're speaking.
Yes. Hey, I got engaged.
What?
Yeah.
What exciting news that I am hearing now for the very first time.
It's the first time we've talked about it. Sort of. I mean, we talked about it before the episode, but...
Yeah, and I kind of forgot to say congratulations since it's the first time we've talked since it happened. Like we've chatted and stuff, but we haven't talked.
Yep.
So congratulations.
Thanks. Appreciate it. Yeah, I had kind of secretly coordinated with her friends, and a couple of my friends here in St. Louis. Spot we did it was in Tower Grove Park, which is a park that was right near our house, maybe 5-minute walk away. There's a geocache there that we walked to on our very first date. It was the middle of February. We had went to pieces and played Patchwork and Codenames Duet, and then we walked to a geocache kind of near this place that now we both live in. And so, yeah, kind of in an area right near there. Her friends were mostly hiding behind a bridge. One of them, who's a photographer, was hiding behind a nearby tree. She was completely caught off guard and surprised. We went to pieces afterwards to celebrate and would have had brunch there, but they were very busy and couldn't end up getting a table. But yeah, it was perfect. It was perfect. And then following that, Sean went on a cruise with her whole family, a week-long cruise. So a lot of time with Abby and her whole crew of late. So, yeah.
I think what I find most disturbing about all of this, and I find much of it disturbing, that's not true, is the fact that you don't have VIP access to pieces, Alex.
I don't.
You're a board game personality. I feel like I have a key to Empire board game library.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
I have my main contact at Pieces who ended up working at Gray Fox Games, no longer with Gray Fox Games. One of the many Matts here in St. Louis. Matts are connected to
everywhere.
This show in so many ways, so many Matts. Had a falling out with the Pieces staff, and so no longer works there. So yeah,
well, that's airing some dirty laundry out there.
Well, whatever. I mean, that's 2 jobs ago for him now. Yeah, it's just no longer a thing. But we tried. We'd reached out to them, and they're like, "Oh no, it should be fine. Just show up on Sunday. There should be a table. No need for a reservation or a private room or anything." We're like, okay. And they were full of it. Ooh. So, yeah.
That's a bad Yelp review right there.
Well, no, they're fine. It's always going to be, it's the first time I ever met Abby, the first place I ever met Abby. So for that reason and that reason alone, it's going to have a special place in my heart for forever. So,
sure.
Yep.
Hey, this is episode 215. Which we're calling Coin Toss, thanks to Baker Mitchell, which is a fantastic title because coin is all caps because it's short for counterinsurgency, which is a reference to Root. And you've got a coin toss at the beginning of a football game, Alex.
You do indeed. And in fact, Football Highlights 2052 comes with a coin that you can toss.
It sure does. So that's great job, Baker. Often namer. How many is that for him?
I don't know. I'd have to look it up. I actually have kept that thing up to date, but I don't actually. There's a whole naming episode leaderboard on the guild, but I just don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
Well, speaking of naming episodes, and speaking of the guild, we get all of our help naming our episodes with the help of our guild number 2008, over on BoardGameGeek.com, and every other week we put up a Dukes on Deck where we ask for some help about the things we're going to talk about on the podcast. So we will give you the rest of the runners up for naming this episode at the end of the episode. So Alex, other than all that craziness, getting engaged, going on a cruise, anything else we need to know about? Any other monumental stuff, or is that all you got? That's it?
I have a job interview on Tuesday.
Ooh.
Can
you say anything about it or what?
No.
All right. Perfect.
It's not board game related. Yes, not board game related.
Right.
It is involving communications.
Okay.
And that's about all I'm going to get into.
Okay.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens, but keep your fingers crossed for me.
Cool.
Yeah. Anyway, that's all that's going on for me. What about you?
Well, I have, let's talk about real quick my weight loss, how that's been going, my healthiness and whatnot.
The Dukes of Diet.
So it has been kind of a little rough with Thanksgiving and everything and the holidays. We've had a couple birthdays at the office, things like that. And I'll tell you, I'll be completely honest with you, what the problem has been. Oh, by the way, I'm down about 2 pounds. I'm at 260.8, which is down about 2 pounds from where I was in the last episode. But we recorded 4 weeks ago?
Yeah, long time. That's
so,
3 weeks ago.
So that's not great. That's not great. But I can tell you exactly what happens. I think with everything else going on, I think the problem is that I don't have any alcohol during the week. I don't have any beers. And then usually on the weekend, I'll have some beers. And initially I'd have maybe 1 or 2, let's say two on Friday and then maybe 1 or 2 on Saturday. Not too much, but I've had a little bit more than that the last couple weekends.
Oh boy.
Just because I like beer. Beer's delicious.
Beer is pretty tasty.
A lot of Old Rasputin, which is nice. It was a stout. Is it a stout? I don't know. Old Rasputin. You ever had any Clown Shoes beers?
No.
There's the Undead. There's this wonderful double IPA. Anyway, yeah. So I think that's been a bit of the problem. So the last week, I was like, all right, you know what? I gotta get in action. And so, a couple days after Thanksgiving, I was probably up to about 266.
Okay.
So up 4 pounds from the last recording. But I got to tell you, you know what really is keeping me in check, Alex, is knowing that I have to report in here on the podcast.
That's good. Yeah, public accountability. I like it.
It's fantastic. So I was just like, all right, I'm gonna hunker down. Even last night I was like, man, I could really go for a beer. And I was like, oh, I'll stop and get something on the way home. And I'm like, nope. Let's stay strong. So, but yeah, other than that, still doing all this crazy marketing stuff. And that's about it for me. Hey, if you want to go over to the Fraser and Ramirez Law YouTube channel, you can see where everything I've learned here from the Dukes of Dice is paying off for my law firms.
Your media background, your media expertise.
Yeah.
Nice.
So that's about it for me. But hey, Alex, we've spent a lot of time here not talking about board games. Maybe we should talk about board games. What do you think?
Yeah.
What do you say?
Yeah, I'll kick things off, and at first a little kind of board game related, but not really talk. I was on the cruise as mentioned, and we stopped in several places: San Juan, Puerto Rico. We stopped in St. Martin. We stopped at Royal Caribbean's private island Coco Cay, which has the North America's tallest water slide. It's 231 steps up to the top. You go 60 miles an hour going down the slide. It's bananas. Yeah. But of course, I brought several games, and we played several games during the course of that trip. The one that we played the most was Tichu. I hadn't played Tichu in a long time, and just so happened that Abby's sister and her husband are board gamers, and yeah, ended up playing Tichu and a couple of other Sushi Go and some classics. There was an escape room on the boat, a really nice escape room on the boat, and ended up captaining the team to a successful escape that we don't know if it was a record, but they said at least the person working said it was the fastest she had seen. So
interesting.
Tore through that escape room. But yeah, I got back home from the cruise, and waiting for me was something I was much anticipating. It was Wavelength, a new Wolfgang Warsch game. It's done by Wolfgang Warsch and the folks who did Monikers, which I've not actually played, but have you played Monikers, John?
I have. Yeah, I played it with Jake and Danielle and BJ Jake and Danielle from Draft Mechanic, and then BJ from Board Game Gumbo at the last Dice Tower Con I went to a million years ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
It's possible I've played monikers and just don't remember, but I don't think so. I don't know. Who knows? In any case, Wavelength is a game where you are trying to figure out where on a spectrum something is. So, if let's say, and this was an example that came up, not likely to live to 100, likely to live to 100. Name a person or thing that fits somewhere on that spectrum based off of a randomized dial. So the dial will be somewhere between the 0%, the not likely to live to 100, or 100% likely to live to 100. And so you kind of secretly see where that wedge is within that range, and then the team's clue giver has to give a clue that tries to get their team to guess that. So let's say it's about 40% of the way. The clue that was given on the night I was at, and this was at Jamie Stegmeier's game night, was Jamie Stegmeier himself. The team did not get that clue. They were much more optimistic about Jamie's ability to live to 100 than the clue giver was. Yeah, that's really the entire game. It has one of the coolest components I've ever seen. And Sean, I tried to describe this to you earlier, kind of pre-show. It's impossible to describe, but everything kind of lives in the box. The scoring lives in the box. The cards, the prompts themselves live in the box, and they run a wide gamut of things. Overrated letter of the alphabet versus underrated letter of the alphabet is one of them in there. Some of them are just patently absurd. One that we ended up passing on because not everyone in the room was familiar with the fantastic game Pokemon was unsexy Pokemon and sexy Pokemon.
Most of them are pretty sexy.
Yeah, well, most of them. But then you have Mr. Mime, and it's just everything kind of gets thrown out the window. In any case, fantastic party game. It doesn't really matter how many you play this with. Kind of at minimum, you would play this with 4. We ended up playing this with, I think there were 12 people in the room, maybe 10, and it worked great. It kind of stirred some pretty robust conversation, lots of laughs, lots of debates. Good fun time, and it's another gem from Wolfgang Warsch. He is putting out a lot of hits. The game box itself for this, by the way, Sean, is absolutely gorgeous. I kickstarted this based off of the look, and it did not let me down. They did a great job with components, production, everything, and very happy with that. That one's going to be a Christmas game hit for sure. So that's Wavelength.
Very cool. Alex, have you played? What's Wolfgang Warsch's new medium weight game? It's like deck building. It's like Taverns of...
Oh, Taverns of Tiefenthal?
Tiefenthal? Yeah, something like that. You haven't played that yet, have you?
I have not played that yet.
Yeah, it's been at Empire, and I was meaning to get a game of it in. I'm curious to try it. I think it's gonna be pretty good. Okay, well, cool. I got to play the new Azul Summer Pavilions the other week at Empire's Dukes of Dice game night. And this is an interesting one. It uses the same mechanics as all the other Azuls, where basically you have certain types of tiles that you're filling in on your personal board to score in specific ways, and you're doing that by drafting tiles from the center shared display. And so you'll have these little coasters that each have 4 randomized tiles on them, and depending on the number of players, so we played 4 players, so there were 9 of these coasters with 4 tiles each, and you choose one of the coasters, and from that you pick all of the tiles of the same color. Maybe it's all 4, maybe it's 3, 2, 1, who knows, whatever. And then those tiles you'll be able to have to place on your board at the end of the round. All of the other tiles from that coaster get put in the center, and then at some point people can start taking all colors of one tile, or all tiles of one color, there we go, from the center to another option that you have there. So here's how this works differently than the other Azuls, because they all have the same base mechanic of drafting tiles, but it's how you put them on your board that makes a difference. You basically have 7 pavilions? You have 1 pavilion star in your center, and then you have, I think, 6 around it. And they are all matching the colors of the tiles, and then the one in the center is kind of a wild one where you have to put different colors in there. And every single star has a 1 value, a 2 value, all the way up to a 6 value. And basically, if I'm going to put something in the 1 value of red, I need 1 red tile. If I want to put something in the 6 value, I need 6 red tiles. One of them will go into that spot, and all the rest of them go to the discard apparatus that you'll then use to repopulate as things go on. And what's really interesting here, and what I think makes this my favorite of the Azuls, even just after one play, is the fact that there's these cool little chaining bonuses that you get when you surround certain areas on your board. So there's a 1 spot, a 2 spot, and a 3 spot that whenever you surround them, you're going to get bonus tiles of your choice from this different center display, which can create some pretty cool chaining effects. And at the end of the game, you're going to score bonus points if you've completed all the colors of a particular star, or if you've completed all of the 1 spots, all of the 2 spots, all of the 3 spots, or all of the 4 spots. Oh, and by the way, you score points throughout the game. As you place tiles, you get a point for itself and a point for every adjacent tile. Now, let me say this. The reason I like it more than the other Azuls, I think, is because of that chaining of bonuses. That's always, I always find that enjoyable. But what I was thinking about this hard, I don't need to own this. And I think that base Azul is probably more accessible. And I'm never going to really say I've got a hankering for an Azul type game. I'm using it in very specific situations, either for new players or if it's here at home, because Raquel and I have played base Azul here a couple times recently. We're just looking for something shorter and easier that we already know how to play, but I don't need to own multiple copies of Azul. So yeah, it's kind of a weird spot, but I think it's worth the play. I would maybe suggest if you don't own any, this might be one to consider. It's a little bit meatier than base Azul, but not by much. They're still pretty similar. So that is Azul Summer Pavilions.
All right, fair enough. Next one I'm going to talk about is an Oink game. And Sean, I have over the years really enjoyed Oink games. They tend to come in really small deck boxes. What am I thinking of? The submarine game, Deep Sea Adventure.
Yep.
Yeah, Deep Sea Adventure is awesome. Fake Artist Goes to New York is awesome. And do I have any other Oink games? I'm trying to think of. I might be forgetting one big one here. Am I forgetting any other big ones from them?
Probably.
Yeah, whatever. Startups is another one, and I think it originally came out in 2015, but was recently revamped. The Shut Up and Sit Down guys did a whole quick review of all of the Oink games out so far, and this one was their runaway favorite, game called Startups. And I got a chance to play this at the very end of game night, and this is one that I am now seeking out. It's like a lot of Oink games, really elegant and simple, and a ton of game in just this small little box. How it works is you are investors looking to invest in startup companies. There's companies with 5 shares in them, all the way up to 10 shares. So 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Before the game, you remove a set number of cards. Everyone has 3 cards in hand, and you are going to draw a card and then either invest in that stock by putting it in front of you or discard it out to kind of the marketplace, an area where people can scoop up cards. If you choose to invest in it, you're looking to have the majority of a certain company at the end of the game. If I have the most of any stock, anyone else who has a share of that stock has to pay me. And when they pay me, they lose $1, but that $1 flips and becomes $3 for me. So it's not as bad for them as it is good for me. But if you're tied with someone, then no money exchanges hands, no bueno. When you've played cards in front of you, if I'm currently shown to be leading in a certain company, then I'll get this anti-monopoly token, which means I can't freely take cards of that company type in the marketplace. However, there's a rule that when you want to draw a new card, if there are cards in the marketplace that you don't want to take, you have to pay them $1 to each card that is out there, $1, in order to draw blind off the deck. Because again, it's painful for you if you have a stock in something and aren't the leader in that stock. You don't want to just play out a bunch of cards because you're potentially paying out a bunch of money. You're going to basically keep drawing, discarding until the deck runs out, Once the dex runs out, all 3 cards that you have remaining in hand will then dump out in front of you. So you could secretly be holding on to cards that could give you a last-second majority in a company. Really simple, really elegant, nicely produced. Again, it's one I'm seeking out. And like some Oink games can be, a little hard to find, at least at the moment. But yeah, fun, quick, and one that if I could get my hands on it in time, would definitely be bringing to Christmas as well. That's Startups from Oink Games.
Cool. All right. Well, the last one I'm going to talk about is Terraforming Mars Turmoil. And Alex, I only got to play this because I'm an awesome attorney.
Oh.
Awesome. Only reason.
What happened?
So you didn't see my video I posted on Facebook? You didn't see that?
I didn't see your video.
Oh, all right. So basically, we don't do a lot of criminal work, Alex. Usually it's when there's some sort of crossover with the divorce or custody case, whatever. And in this case, I was defending my client. He had a misdemeanor domestic violence case that I can say unequivocally didn't happen. It literally didn't happen. I can't go into details why it didn't happen, but trust me, it did not happen in any way, shape, or form. And so 6 months, we've been waiting to go to trial. Wednesday was the trial. And I talked to the DA and I'm like, hey, are we really doing this? Are we really going to trial? You're not dismissing this case? And she's like, no, we're going to trial. So we go to trial. I present my opening statement. It's great. I do a great job, Alex. Fantastic job. Great opening statement. And the witnesses, if you're a witness in a case, you're not supposed to be in the courtroom because they don't want you to hear what's going on.
Right.
This witness, the main witness, the alleged victim is what we call this person. The alleged victim was in a side room that actually had the audio of the courtroom going.
Oh.
And near the tail end of my opening statement, because I basically said, none of this makes sense. Like, these facts don't add up. This doesn't make sense. None of this makes sense. My guy's got alibis. They're about to testify on his behalf. She left. She left the courthouse. And as I go to sit down, the DA walks up to the podium and says, Your Honor, the witness has left the courthouse. We cannot proceed. And I say, Judge, I move to dismiss. Case gets dismissed. Boom.
Nice.
So I had been up since 4:00 that morning, finishing preparation. I'd been at the office till about 8 the night before. And I'm like, you know what? I'm done. I'm completely done. And I went to Empire. I got word from Rory that Chris was going to be there. He had the day off. And we set up a 3-player game of Terraforming Mars Turmoil. And whew, this game's crazy. So Terraforming Mars, everyone should have an idea about that. You're working not cooperatively to terraform Mars. Great card play, great engine building, combo card play, all sorts of stuff. Turmoil adds a politics component to it. There is a world government on Earth that has an effect on what's happening with all the corporations terraforming Mars. And there's 2 main components to this. First, there are these event cards that occur, and you get to see 2 generations ahead. So you know which one's coming up this generation, and then the next generation, the one after. And they're typically good and bad. So there's usually, you're going to lose something for them, but you could also potentially gain something for them. But if you're not prepared or set up for them, you can get kicked around pretty good. Then there's also the World Council, and there are 5 or 6 different political parties, different factions that while they're in power, while they have the majority of the council, you're going to have some sort of special ability that you can use during the regular turn. And then also you're going to get some sort of bonus for that particular power being, or that particular faction being in power. So for example, there's the scientist faction, and at the end of a turn in which the scientists are the controlling faction, you get $1 for every science tag that you have. Or I can't remember the name. Oh, the Kelvinists, not Calvinists, but the Kelvinists, they give you $1 for every heat production that you have. So kind of interesting thing there. Now, as an action on your turn, you could send out a delegate. You get 1 free delegate each generation, and you could send them out to the factions. And if there are now more of your color in that faction, you're going to take over the party leadership, which is potentially worth influence and some other things at the end of the round. And if you're the dominant party at the end of the round and you're the party leader of that dominant party, then you're going to become the chairperson of the entire World Council, which will give you a Terraform rating. So that's pretty interesting. So there's some interesting things you can do to kind of jockey for position. Some turns you want a particular faction to be in power. In fact, there are some cards that require that faction to be in power, or in the alternative, for you to be the chairperson, the party leader of that faction in order for you to be able to play the card. Also, in addition to the free representative you could put out, you could also spend $5 to put extra ones out. So it's an interesting choice. What I will say is this: there is an interesting downward pressure that this game puts on you because you actually lose a Terraform rating every generation.
Oh.
Because of all of the turmoil, hey, that's the name of the expansion, and the infighting that's happening back in EarthGov. So, but there's ways to kind of make up for that if you're playing it smartly. Boy, I did terribly, Alex. I did super bad. This is the only expansion we played with. We didn't play with everything else. And I was kind of trying to wrap my head around the politics aspect of it. I struggled a bit with this new corporation I had. They're Mon's insurance company. And you start the game with 4 extra money production. Everyone else loses 2 money production. But anytime another player during the rest of the game causes another player to lose production or to lose a resource, I have to pay them $3. I'm paying out the insurance claims.
Yeah, it makes sense.
But if I don't have the money to pay them out, then claim denied. I don't have to pay it out. So what was interesting was we kept track because I was interested. I wound up over the course of the game, I had like an extra $30 than I would have otherwise, in theory. But I didn't have it when I needed it, if that makes sense. So I had, let's say I would have a turn and I had $10 left, and that's exactly what I need to play this new card. But then boom, somebody hits someone else's plants. I have to pay them out. And now I'm sitting with this extra $7 that I can't do anything with. So it was interesting. I benefited in one sense, but the tempo was off. So yeah, it was interesting. I think it's going to take me a couple more plays to wrap my head around this expansion. It is really punishing. And in that sense, I wouldn't consider it an essential expansion. I definitely wouldn't think to include this if teaching a new player. There are some expansions you could probably get away with that. Prelude easily, and then maybe one other expansion. But this one is pretty punishing. Added an interesting dynamic. I'm definitely interested in playing this again, and I'll probably be looking to pick up a copy because I'm a completionist. So
sure, makes sense. And the game itself is, I mean, it has lasted a long time for a reason.
Right, but not forever, right, Alex?
No, not forever.
Okay,
just 8 years. Clock is ticking. No, I thought I gave that one a high score on that front. I thought that was on my list.
Yeah, but it's going to go away when we colonize Mars.
Right. Yeah. Eventually.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. But 10 years from now, still fine.
Wow. Okay. That's optimistic.
Anyway,
so that's Terraforming Mars, the new expansion, Turmoil. Check it out.
Very good. And that's what we've played. Let's head on over to the news desk. All right, Sean, first up in news, something that's a little bit of a throwback to the very early days of the Dukes of Dice, when we insisted, in song form even, that everything was, in fact, Splendor.
Yes.
A song that you, by the way, feel free not to sing it again.
No,
that's fine.
Don't worry, I'm good. We're not going to.
Yeah. So we have learned, though, that this game, which pretty good, long-lasting game, not going away anytime soon because, hey, guess what? It's getting a Marvel version. Marvel Splendor coming in. It was initially reported as Q1 2020, but a later correction said late 2020. So possibly an Essen release, or I think Gen Con would be the earliest. You'd probably see it at Gen Con, but who knows? In any case, it is, instead of themed around, and for folks who don't know, Splendor is an engine building game where you are trying to build jewels effectively. I mean, you're a craft. There's not much of a theme in the game. Those jewels are replaced in this with infinity stones. So you are trying to get enough points and then have special marker cards in your tableau along with the time stone, and then you can complete the infinity gauntlet. So it sounds like there's going to be some sort of additional rules to kind of have it fit the theme pretty well. But yeah, that's infinity stones coming soon to a Splendor experience near you. Sean, is this one you're going to look to pick up?
Yes, it is. And I'll tell you exactly why.
Why?
Chewie can kind of play Splendor.
Okay.
Kind of. Kind of. And I think actually, now that I think about it, it's probably been close to a year since we last played it. So I bet you she could probably like really play it. And she loves Marvel. So this kind of seems like a no-brainer.
Nice.
Yeah.
It's one I'm intrigued to see how they mix in the theme with this game that was not well known for its theme in the time, was well known for its components, had gotten a Dice Tower awards nomination for best components at the time. Yeah, so keep an eye out for that sometime next year. All right, next up, this one's been out for a couple weeks, but Sean wanted to talk about it anyway. So here we go.
We haven't been on for a couple weeks.
That's fine. Amazon's Alexa can now play you in Ticket to Ride, either base or Europe. Weird. Sean, what's this one all about?
So yeah, Alexa has things called skills that you can download, and I have an Alexa. Do you have an Alexa, Alex?
I do have an Alexa. Yeah.
So we use it all the time, usually for reminders, like for getting Chewie out the door in the morning and for bedtime and things like that. But what this can do is this can help you tell you how to set up the game, give you the rules of the game, and also keep track of scoring. Or it can even join as another player. And it can also play background music and add sound effects to your game. So my Alexa's upstairs, but I'm in the app on my phone. I'm just kind of looking it up here. And it works both for base Ticket to Ride and Ticket to Ride Europe.
Okay.
Oh yeah, look at that. Although it's not gotten great reviews.
Oh no.
Is that only three people? Is this right?
There's no way it's only 3 people. This news was...
So there's 2 separate skills, one for base Ticket to Ride, one for Ticket to Ride Europe. 5 people have rated base Ticket to Ride at 4 stars. 3 people have rated Ticket to Ride Europe at 2.5 stars.
Huh. Is it possible she's just forgotten about tunnels or whatever the specialty rule is with that game?
I don't know. Let's go take a look. All right.
Sean's now looking up these reviews, these 3 disgruntled people for Ticket to Ride Europe.
So an Amazon customer, that's all it says, gave it 1 star, gets stuck during the instructions for telling her about station and sounds like a skipping record that resets to a prior point just to get stuck again on the same issue.
Ooh.
Yeah. Someone else gave it 3 stars. It's a little bit longer. I'm not going to read the whole thing. Throwing some serious shade at Alexa. Alexa, on the other hand, just seems to plod along, making plays that are unexpected and can be frustrating. She isn't good enough to win, but she mixes the game up enough that she adds fun to the experience.
Huh.
Have
Is
you
that
seen
fun in quotes?
Have you seen that video? Bored with Life.
Is there a specific one?
The one where they're playing Agricola, and
No.
Casey. Do you know what I'm talking about? You know the series I'm talking about?
I think I've seen an episode.
Okay, so Casey, who is kind of the rules lawyer and master strategist of the group, every time the dumb guy makes a move, he just goes, huh. Basically because he's frustrated that this guy is doing everything wrong, which has the precise effect of completely screwing Casey up with what he's trying to do without actually helping himself, if that makes sense. So
Got it.
that's
Okay.
kind of what that reminded me of. Huh.
Huh.
It's always bad when you hear Eugene go, huh, to you.
Yeah, no, it's not great. He's good at games.
Yeah.
There's always a couple of those folks in every group who just seem to always be in every game.
So we were playing Bus last night, which I didn't talk about, but I'll probably talk about in the future. And Bus is hard. It is hard. This is a Splendor game that just got released by Capstone. And all I'll say about it is this. It was very hard. There's a worker placement element. And I handed him my piece because the actions were on the other side of the board for me. I handed him my piece and didn't tell him what I wanted to do with it just to see if he would place it for me. They're like, oh, well, that's what you meant, right? He didn't. And I was like, oh, shoot. Okay, well, do this then.
Nicely done.
Yeah. Anyway, Ticket to Ride for Alexa.
Yay!
Go check it out.
All right. Well, speaking of technology and high-tech things, Kickstarter we're talking about this week is something called GoDice. Sean, have you seen this Kickstarter?
I have seen it. Yes.
As he opens up the page
there
while
it
we're
is.
recording. Oh, there! I've now seen it officially. So these are digital. They're not digital dice. They're Bluetooth connected high-tech dice. They can communicate with an app on an iPad. They're D6s, so you can get either 5D6 or 6D6, or there's other bundle deals, but they're D6s. They charge in a little carrying case, and they take about a minute to charge, and then they last for about an hour once they're out of that. They communicate, as mentioned, with an app on via Bluetooth, with an app on an iPad. And I guess the idea of this is, one, it can interact with digital games, so you can play Yahtzee or Farkle or some of those types of games on this app that they've created. But it's also, there's an RPG toolkit, so you can kind of use it to, I roll 6d6 and it just immediately adds things up for you. So, it has elements of several things in there. What's interesting too is it comes with these, if you order at certain levels, it comes with shells that can turn those D6 into a D20 or a modified D4 or a D8 or a D12. They're shells that kind of wrap around the D6. So, yeah, Bluetooth-enabled connected dice. Sean Ramirez, attorney at law, when you are first seeing this in this moment, is your reaction, oh, interesting, or is it, ooh, interesting?
It is the latter, Alex.
Oh, boy.
And you know what I just did? I just did a search on the page for balance.
Oh, yeah.
No result.
Yep.
And weight.
Yep.
No result. There's a ways.
Yeah.
But there's no.
How are these balanced? Are these balanced dice?
Yeah. Is there another word I should search?
No, I think that's it, probably. Maybe it's in the FAQ. You could poke around the page a little, see if it's there. But
accurate.
Okay. Accurate.
The internal sensors enable accurate orientation measurements.
Well, that's not
the issue. Huh.
Yeah, that's not the question. Because they're basically dice with a bunch of electronics inside of them.
Right.
And so is one switch on one side in such a way that it makes it more likely to roll a 6 on this dice? Who knows what's going on, but yeah, balance in dice, pretty important factor. You'd have to think they've thought about that.
I'm looking through the FAQs.
Okay.
Can you tell if someone is cheating with GoDice?
Well,
I don't. Yeah, no. What? Oh man, there's a ton of it.
I guess remotely that's the question. If you're playing with someone whose their dice are somehow connected to your app, can you tell if people are cheating with it? I guess that's the question. Maybe.
Okay.
Did you find something?
Here we go. How well are the dice balanced? We are definitely well aware of the dice balance importance and put a lot of our engineering efforts on this specific matter. The die will be solid with the inner volume filled with plastic, which makes it look, weigh, and feel just like a standard die. The prototypes look very promising, and we have planned several ways of tweaking the center of gravity for the final product. We are not sure if we'll get to the perfect 16.6 repeating percent, as in theory, winky smiley face, but we are definitely hoping to come close.
Okay. Well, yeah. So they're working on it is kind of the answer there. Now, okay, Sean, let's assume these are perfectly balanced.
Yes.
These are perfectly balanced functional dice or close enough to it. Something you're going to get, something you're interested in.
No,
okay.
Absolutely not. Like if I needed this, there's a billion apps that do it for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah, I can search Google and I can roll a bunch of D6 on Google if I need to.
I can also add up 66 fairly quickly. So,
Yep.
I mean, I don't know. Sure. No, not at all. Not at all interested, Alex.
Well, Sean, just in case you're interested, here are the price points. If you want the very base level, it's $59. That gets you 5d6, a charger, and 5 games that are available on the app, basically. If you want to expand that to 10 games and get an additional d6, $69. And keep in mind, these may be early bird prices. I don't know if they've tweaked or changed. They appear to have some sort of time window, so your pricing may vary. It may actually be more than this. $79 for 6d6, a charger, 10 games, a stand, and a cup, or $99 for 6d6, 6 D&D shells, so the things that can get you a D10, D10 percentage, D20, D4, D8, D12, and an RPG calculator app. So yeah, that's now I will say this, Sean, you may not be interested, I may not be interested, but there are a good amount of people who are, because this thing has raised, as of the time of this recording, more than $200,000.
Woof.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's they're certainly going to need a good chunk of change to develop something this high tech, you would think.
Yeah.
But they have some experience. They've kind of previously released, I can't remember the name of it. I think it's called GoCube, but it's a Rubik's Cube that's connected to an app.
Oh, we have that.
Do you have this?
Yeah, Raquel just got it for Chewy. Oh my goodness, really?
Oh, yeah.
Like literally just the other day.
Oh.
Have you seen it? Is it the one that's like, it's kind of like whitish?
It has like corners. So not all of the things on the Rubik's Cube are squares. Some of them are corner pieces.
This is something different. This is something different. It's similar.
Okay. All right.
Someone ripped it off probably.
Oh, okay. Fair enough. So yeah, that is GoDice, available until January 16th, 2020, already well-funded. Give it a look if Bluetooth connected dice sound like something that you're intrigued by. And that's a look at the news. Hey, Sean. They say Rome wasn't built in a day, but you can lay down a foundation pretty quickly. In a day? You think in a day? You can lay down a foundation in a day?
I think less than a day. I don't think it's going to be that long of a game, Alex. I think it's a game length you'd at least play.
Oh, that's good, because I'm pretty limited in that scope. Yeah, Foundations of Rome, coming soon from Arcane Wonders on Kickstarter. And Sean, you have seen this one before, and you've been excited by this one before.
Yes, Alex. This has some incredibly crafted, beautiful architectural miniatures, different distinct architectural styles for the different players. It creates this fantastic looking cityscape that really has to be seen to believe. The city building board game Foundations of Rome puts you into the role of an architect competing to own land and build magnificent structures. Build damus and insulae, fountains, wineries, and stables, then increase your renown by constructing majestic monuments such as a temple to Jupiter or the Colosseum itself. With over 100 wonderfully detailed miniatures, Foundations of Rome is a testament to the glory of Rome that you can bring to your table.
That looks pretty cool, and it's done by a pretty awesome designer in Emerson Matsuuchi, who has done a number of other Dutchy favorites. So, yeah, if you're curious about this game, go to foundationsofrome.com, click on the sign-up link to sign up and get notified when it goes live on Kickstarter. Arcane Wonders, it's never a blunder when you go with Arcane Wonders. Toptonia, table share.
Oh, Alex, yeah. So,
well, I was trying to sing the national anthem of Game Topper Nation.
Yeah.
It didn't work too well, but we're gonna keep this ad going anyway.
So yeah, Alex, Game Topper Nation.
Yeah.
We've talked quite a bit about GameToppersLLC.com. You can like them and follow them on Facebook, but there's also Game Topper Nation, which you can join to basically show off your game toppers. Not only show them off, but look at other people's game toppers so you can see how fantastic these amazing toppers are for playing some of your favorite board games. Plus, Berkey, our buddy Berkey, uses it for polls. Like hey, we need new playmats. What would you guys like to see in terms of new playmats? And he throws them out there so you can help him figure out what everyone's gonna want to see on the latest new playmats, Alex. Alex, you are an honorary citizen of the Game Topper Nation because you have a Game Topper.
I do indeed. I just officially joined Game Topper Nation Facebook group and have been informed by Facebook that a passport is already on its way.
Oh, perfect.
I'm a dual citizen, Sean, of both the United States and of Game Topper Nation.
Well, if you could only keep one citizenship, Alex, which would that be?
It would be a close call. Because on one hand, you get to vote on fantastic polls on the future of Game Toppers, and the other, just all of the, citizenship benefits of being a United States citizen.
So head on over to Facebook to check out Game Topper Nation, and head on over to their website, GameToppersLLC.com.
This week, we are taking a look at a sequel to my favorite game of all time. Baseball Highlights 2045, first mention. This is a sequel, 7 years later, not in the real world, but in the game world, and a whole different sport. Does this trip to the gridiron live up to the high expectations that I had for this? Or will it be a pick six thrown by Eagle Gryphon?
All right, so Football Highlights 2052 from Eagle Gryphon Games, designed by friend of the show, Mike Fitzgerald. Very good friend of the show, so we kind of need that out there. Also, this is kind of a review copy. You kickstarted, Alex, but somebody, someone, something sent you a copy in advance, right?
Without actually asking, I think it was just, hey, this guy loves Baseball Highlights 2045. Let's send him an early copy of Football Highlights 2052. Now, also, on top of this, here's an additional disclosure for folks.
Right.
I did help playtest this one in several iterations, several occasions, gave feedback, did my best to give feedback on this. Now, I will say, and also, yeah, Mike's a good friend. He has given game suggestions to the show before. But for longtime listeners of the Dukes of Dice, you should know, Baseball Highlights 2045, I was over the moon about. You were over the moon about. It's a Boxcars Award winner, which we haven't had one of those in a long time. Dragon Island, which we also reviewed on the show, was absolutely not one that did very well. And I felt so bad. Now, Mike is, having been in game design for a long time, was very kind afterwards, said, hey, it's okay. You just can do your best to give an honest review. So, I don't feel like there's a huge conflict of interest here, but we're certainly talking about it. And yeah, this should be a really interesting one, Sean. I'm very curious where you're at with this, but in any event, sort of a review copy, sort of some conflicts and entanglements there, but you know about them. Let's hop to it. Sean, what were your expectations for this game?
How about I talk about how we play the game first?
Oh, yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
I don't know.
So I'm gonna explain this as if people are not familiar with football, because everyone may not be. I will say that very similar to Baseball Highlights, having a familiarity with baseball for that game, it's helpful to have a passing familiarity with football to kind of grok this game. So it's going to be played over two halves, so two phases basically. And in each phase, you're going to be drawing 10 cards of a 15-card deck, although really there's going to be more cards you're going to see. And you're going to be playing out 10 cards back and forth. I play a card, then Alex, you play a card, and we do that 10 times. That's a half. And the goal here is for me to move my football that's on your half of the field. So we have a shared, really it's two boards put together. So a football field is 100 yards. There's an end zone on either side, and you're trying to get it into your the ball into your opponent's end zone. In this game, there are two balls because it's not a simulation of football. It's the highlights of football. And so while I'm trying to move the ball forward on your side, you're trying to move your ball forward on my side, Alex. And if I get it into the end zone, I'm going to score 7 points. If I'm not able to get into the end zone, but I have an opportunity to make a field goal, that's going to be worth 3 points. And then if I'm able to force you to lose yardage, that's going to move you past the 50, or is it past the 45 in this case? I can't remember exactly. But either way, then I'm going to get 2 points for what's called the safety. I
think it's past the 50.
Past the 50. Okay. And at the end of the two halves, whoever has the most points is the winner of this particular football game. All right. So let's talk about how you play. So let's say you have a complete starter deck, because there's a way to draft at the beginning of the game. But for beginners, they say don't do that. Just play with this 15 card starter deck. So you take your Denver deck, or you take your New England deck, and you're going to flip the coin to see who goes first. And I'm going to play one of the cards from my hand, my 10 card hand. We'll come back to audibles. I'm going to play one of the 10 cards from my hand. And there are two orientations of this card. There's an offensive orientation and there's a defensive orientation. It's either going to be a running play, a passing play, or kind of a wild play called a maul, which is imported from rugby. And so this is what I'm threatening. So if you're familiar with baseball highlights, you're going to be familiar with this concept. I'm threatening this particular type of play, and I'm going to do this either on the left side of the field, the right side of the field, or down the middle. Now, Alex, after I've played my offensive card, is going to have the opportunity to play a card from his hand to prevent my offensive play. Ideally, he's going to play a matching defense, which again is the other side of a card. Offense at the top, defense at the bottom. And if it's a matching play, run for run, and if he's able to line up at least the number of helmets necessary, well, I'll come back to that. Able to line up helmets either in the middle or the left or the right where I have my footballs located, then he's going to trigger the defensive play, and it might say no gain, or it might say minus 5 yards, minus 15 yards, whatever. So let's give an example. So I play a card that is 25-yard run down the middle, and maybe Alex, you play a running defense that has one helmet that matches the one football in the center, and it says minus 15. So I'm going to get to advance the ball on your side of the field by 10 yards. 25 minus 15, 10 yards. That's my first down. I'm going to get to do that 4 times. And at the end of the 4th play, if I haven't scored, I'm going to have to reset, because in football, you have 4 opportunities basically to get 10 yards. But in this case, we're not doing first downs. We're just trying to score. So, okay. So that's part of it. Now, here's where it can get kind of interesting. Let's say that, Alex, you play a mismatch defense. Well, you may prevent some of my gain if, even despite your mismatch defense, you still have managed to line up a helmet to the balls that I'm threatening with. But because it's a mismatch play, we're going to flip over a random card from the action deck. And the action deck gives you a couple different options. It's basically random things that happen in certain situations. So if I played my running play, Alex, you defended with a passing defense, we're going to flip over the top card of the action deck. And since I played the running play, we're going to see what it says to do to modify the running play. And it could be plus 5 yards. It could be plus 50 yards, whole bunch of different stuff. So you really got to be careful there. You may think, oh, this guy's 40 yards from the end zone and it's a 10-yard play. I don't need to worry about it. Oh no, he just scored because of this poor flip. There's also certain triggers that will occur on the offense. There are injuries that could happen. On the defense, there are penalties that could happen, which are going to cause these random flips, and you'll consult the cards to see what happens. Usually nothing for penalties and injuries. All right, so the other interesting thing is, now, Alex, you've played your defensive card. I discard my offensive card, and that's how I'm keeping track of my downs. And the defensive card that you played now gets rotated up, and that is your offensive play that you're threatening, that I then have to play a defensive card. So really interesting. So it's not just what am I defending against, but what do I want to threaten for this next down of mine? Very interesting. At the end of any play that did not end in something that resets the offense, or even at the end of the 4th play, you're able to attempt a field goal, which again is worth 3 points. Field goals get progressively easier the closer you get to the goalpost at the end zone. And so there's another random flip, plus there's a certain modifier on the last offensive play. And if you meet the threshold, you're going to score your 3 points. And you could choose to do that on 3rd down, 2nd down, whatever, but you'll reset your offense. You'll go back to the 45-yard line, and you'll have 4 new downs. Now, I mentioned audibles before. So audibles have an equivalency in baseball highlights of the pinch hitter. At the start of a half, you're able to take a card from your hand and put it in an audible spot. and then you'll draw to replace it. And you have an option as the offensive or defense to play an audible. So let's look at it a couple different ways. Let's say that I play my offensive card, and Alex, you don't have a good way to prevent it. I'm going to get in the end zone and score, but you have the perfect card in your audible zone. So what you'll do is you'll discard a card from your hand to your spent audibles, for lack of a better term, and you'll be able to move that card up to the play area, and boom, you stopped it. Great. Now, let's say instead, I play my offensive play, and it's going to get me in. It's fourth down. It's my last chance. And you have the perfect defense, Alex. That's going to shut me down cold. So I say, you know what? That's okay, because I'm going to call an offensive audible. I discard my offensive card, and then I pull out my audible card. And hey, it's the little 5-yard short run that I need to get me into the end zone, and I score. Now, what's interesting is you can do 3 audibles a half. And if you don't have any audible cards or an audible card in your little audible area, you're doing it blind off the top of the deck. And you cannot do an audible. Both the offense and the defense can't do an audible on the same play. So there's that. At the end of the half, once both players have played their 10 cards, there's going to be a draft that you can then use to kind of augment your deck, but you're swapping in player for player or card for card. So you are never having more than a 15-card deck. And you repeat the second half, and that's how you play Football Highlights 2052. I think I covered almost everything.
You covered the important stuff.
I think that makes perfect sense, Alex, if you know anything about football. If you know nothing about football, I feel like it's kind of hard to grok, because there's two layers of learning there. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Okay.
Sure.
So, Alex, tell me, I think people are most interested to hear your initial expectations when you first heard about Football Highlights 2052.
Incredibly excited. Obviously, Baseball Highlights was love at first sight, and it's been something we've talked about a ton on this show. In fact, I just wrapped up a Baseball Highlights 2045 app league where was playing over the phone with several people. I made it to the finals. I did really well. I'm no Philip Millman, but I did pretty well. It's a game I've been passionate about. I've helped run major tournaments of. And so to hear that football was the next one in this series, it makes perfect sense. The great thing about how Baseball Highlights works is you're playing offense and defense at the same time. Football is tailor-made for that kind of a game and can be done in a way that it would actually make sense. So this is a game that I think the system most made sense for. As much as I'd love to see hockey as a lifelong hockey fan, someone who is not only doing this podcast, but at the same time watching the St. Louis Blues currently leading 4-2 over the Vegas Golden Knights. It would be hard to see that working well with that game. Basketball kind of similarly as well. It just doesn't seem to fit as well. This works beautifully because there's a distinct offense and a distinct defense on a team that are different parts of that same team. So to hear that was coming down the pipe, unbelievably excited, really curious to see how this was going to come out. And obviously you have to start thinking of, is this thing going to be game of the year for me for whatever year it comes out? That's how much I love Baseball Highlights 2045. It has been the undisputed number one game, continues to be. Nothing has really come close except the occasional thought about Matai from time to time. But no, unbelievably excited, in huge anticipation. What about you, Sean?
Yeah, so interesting, right? Because first off, Mike Fitzgerald, card games are totally his thing, right? Like, huge fan of him as a designer when it comes to games like Diamonds, a fantastic trick-taking game. I love all of his rummy games. And then, of course, Baseball Highlights, huge fan, not nearly to the level that you are, but something I still play multiple times a year. There's a great narrative to it, great drama to it. I think it's fantastic. And then thinking about the subject matter, so football and baseball are interesting. So I played football later in life than I played baseball. I stopped playing baseball in Little League. But football I played throughout most of high school. And what's interesting about football is I was an offensive lineman and I was a linebacker. And I played both ways, which was exhausting. But because of those, like the whole strategy of football was not something I was super aware of, right? It was basically on offense especially, right? On offense, it was, all right, you gotta block left, you got to block right. The ball's running this way. It's a pass play, and that's it. You're the grunts on the football team. And so while I have some passing familiarity with football and the strategy of football, it's not something that I've enjoyed since I've stopped playing in terms of watching, right? If anything, I enjoy watching baseball more than I enjoy watching football.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, it's
crazy.
Weird.
Isn't that weird?
That's very weird.
Yeah, I think it's super weird. I don't know. There's something about baseball. Like I feel, I don't know. I can't explain it. So I would say cautiously optimistic. Anytime you have a designer kind of putting a spin on a prior hit of theirs and tweaking it for a different genre, audience, theme, whatever, it's cautious optimism is how I would put it.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and you've liked football games in the past. Blood Bowl has been one that you've really enjoyed. And yeah, so.
I think that football is I think it translates better to board games than baseball might.
It's a more strategically interesting game in general than something like baseball or even hockey, which I love. And basketball is more strategically interesting, but the most strategically interesting, I think, of all those major sports is definitely something like is football. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and let me say this though. So take those expectations, and then you sent me out your copy, or the advanced copy that you got after you got your Kickstarter. And so I had actually watched. Actually, wait, did I watch anyone at that point? No, I didn't. Eventually, I would come to watch Dan King, the Game Boy Geeks, How to Play. But I'm like, oh, I'll be fine. I got to Empire, and I'm like, I'll bust it open. Alex has already played this. It's already broken down. I'll just read the rule book real quick, and then I'll find someone and we'll start playing the game. I don't know what the heck you did, Alex. And boy, it's taking a lot of restraint on my part to limit it to heck. But all of the cards were like mixed together. So there's a bunch of starter teams. There are the additional players. There's a solo deck. There's the action cards. And they were all just jumbled together. I don't know what in the world you did to that thing, Alex.
Can I tell you this? My copy of Baseball Highlights 2045 also looks very much like that.
How do you do that? How do you live with yourself?
Look, because then when you set up to play, you just take a little bit of time to sort it out. It's not that big of a deal.
Oh, God. Poor Abby. Poor Abby. Okay. So I was a little frustrated. And then on top of it, I'm not a big fan of this rulebook, Alex.
Oh, we're going right into rulebook.
Well, that's the next thing on our list, right?
Sure.
So the setup is in the middle of the rulebook.
Oh, yeah. So
that drove me insane.
Can I say this?
Sure.
Football Highlights 2052 is very similar to its predecessor in that both games have a very iffy rulebook. Right. I love Baseball Highlights 2045 to death. That rulebook was straight up terrible when I first went through it. There were some rules that I was still learning about the game maybe a year or two after playing.
Sure.
I mean, that's just, and some of it is there's a lot of complicated interactions
Yes.
and things, but it's like even basic stuff, like the pinch hitter ability. I thought you could only pinch hit from your one pinch hitter spot, and if you didn't have that, too bad. Oops, you can pinch hit blind off the top of the deck, which is a huge part of strategy
Right.
in the game too. So, yeah.
So that first night,
no, I get
I'm
it.
like, you know what? I'm not doing this right now because I'm too pissed off. So
Yep.
I put it together, put it to the side, and then I went and watched Dan King's video, and I'm like, okay, fine. And then I took the time to reorganize everything, and it stayed organized over numerous plays, Alex, because that's just something you do.
It doesn't lend itself well to organization for this particular reason. The game comes with 15 card starter teams, but depending on the format you're playing with, you either are going to play with 5 and then the full 10 for your first game. You'll just play with 15 of, say, Chicago or Green Bay or whoever. Or there's a version where you can mix in those 10 with the other free agents.
Right.
So the question is, Sean, have you been storing it with the 15 card teams separate?
Yeah.
Okay.
You break it down. You sort them out and you break it down.
But you could also just leave them all shuffled together in the free agent deck.
Alex, when you cook, do you clean up as you go or do you leave
No.
it for the next day?
Well, so Abby and I have an arrangement with cooking. I do pretty much all the cooking here. I like cooking. I don't like cleaning. So I will absolutely just leave everything out. And in fact, today I made a lovely Thai green curry beef over some rice. It was very tasty. It was kind of tasty. I should have done full fat milk instead of like coconut milk. But yeah, you live and you learn. So yeah, but I left 6 cabinets open.
Jeez.
6 cabinets open.
Open cabinets drive me insane.
Yeah,
insane. You know what I made tonight, Alex?
What'd you make?
I made ribeye street tacos.
Ooh, that sounds good.
Ribeye street tacos with some guacamole, some of the ranchero cheese, a little bit of sour cream, and then some pineapple habanero hot sauce. Okay. It was fantastic.
That sounds like it would be really good. I think you probably had a better dinner than I did.
Anyway, football highlights.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's not a great rule book. Anything else to say about the rule book?
Well, let's throw in a couple things here, right?
Okay.
As you mentioned, the setup is right in the middle of the rule book. I kind of understand the idea of getting some concepts across. The problem is when you're looking to cross-reference things later or look up a rule, do you look before the setup? Do you look after the setup? Where do you look for this particular rule that you might need? The game does include some player aids, which are lovely. The player aids give you kind of a more quote-unquote streamlined version of what's going on. But then, it also has all of the abilities spelled out, a whole huge glossary of plays because there's a lot of special abilities. What makes this unusual compared to, say, Baseball Highlights is Baseball Highlights in the base game box has some free agents with some abilities, but only a handful. And then over the years, more and more expansions have come out. There were some that I think came out initially, and then more have been added, and now you can get something like 8 or 9 expansions. This one feels like it has a bunch of expansions already roped in there just based on the sheer number of different offensive and defensive abilities. Sure. And what makes it especially complicated as a game is you have offensive and defensive abilities on just about every card. Not always, but a good chunk of cards. So, yeah, it's just not well organized. They do their best to kind of have breakout sections of boxes with Mike's head saying, hey, don't forget, do this. Hey, don't forget, do that. But if I had not helped play test the game, I think I would have had a much harder time learning the game than I actually did. But no, I agree. It's a negative for the game. And unfortunately, it's something that's kind of emblematic of the series. So, yeah, rulebook, kind of iffy.
Yeah.
All right, Sean. And this is going to kind of continue on a sour note, I have a feeling.
Yes.
For art and components. Now, let me take a quick step aside before we get into this and say, this is my favorite game of all time. The expectations were ludicrously high. I am more likely than not to nitpick something like this than something else. But I think, Sean, we probably will have a pretty similar experience and similar things to say on this section of things. I want to talk about the good first. The good for me, at least with art and components, is the cards are of a very high quality, much like they were in Baseball Highlights 2045. Agreed. Nice linen finish, really good. The scoreboards that they include in the game, I thought that was a really, really cool component. They're a little bit loose when you're assembling them. I couldn't get the grommets to quite completely tighten up, so it makes kind of having those scores be locked in place a little bit tricky, but I like the banners that they include, and you can use those scoreboards for both Baseball Highlights or for Football Highlights. They've included either you can use them for 2 Football Highlights scoreboards or 1 Baseball Highlights scoreboard. I thought that was a cool touch.
Yeah, agreed.
Little footballs. I think the player boards actually were pretty decent and had the information you'd need to have on them. Those are the positives for me, Sean.
Absolutely. Total agreement, 100%.
Any other positives you have on this?
Component-wise, I think a great job.
Yes. Oh, boy.
Oh.
Okay, now we get into art and I would say graphic design. We don't normally we sort of say like art and components typically, but art and graphic design. I think I would throw both of them in here. And what I'm doing here, which folks can't see because this is a podcast, is I took some Baseball Highlights 2045 cards, and I have some Football Highlights 2052 cards to kind of side by side and do some comparison.
I didn't think to do that, but just when you flashed the Baseball Highlights cards just now.
Sure.
I'm like, oh yeah. Big, huge difference. So walk us through it, Alex.
Yeah, so I'm holding him up to the screen, and Sean can kind of get a sense of things. Yeah, Sean even, the expression on his face. So I'll say this for Football Highlights. You have to communicate an awful lot of information on a card.
Yes.
You're communicating, and here's all the information. What type of play is this? Is this a pass play, a run play, or a maul play on defense? Is this a pass play, a run play, or a maul play on offense? Are there helmets on the left, center, or right of the defense? Are there footballs on the left, center, or right of the offense? Are there more than one football? Then right below that, you also have, is there, how much yardage does this offensive play gain? There's also a special ability on there. There is also a defensive play and ability on there potentially. Not all of them have an offensive ability. Sometimes it's just straight yardage. Sometimes you have multiple play types on the same card. You might have a pass to the left and a run center, and you'll have to pick one of those to resolve. You also have on these cards what set it comes from. You also have a number that's used for field goals. Some cards are help make field goals easier. Some cards help make them harder. You have a name, and then you have a city or group that they are associated with. And then you also have art. You also have art on the card.
Plus potentially an injury marker, yes, or a flag marker.
Yeah, or penalty.
Penalty.
Yeah. That's a lot of stuff on one card, Sean.
It's quite a bit.
And here's the quick list for a baseball highlights card, right? You have, and this is assuming it's a free agent card. You have the name of the card, where it comes from. You have how much it costs, how much revenue it produces, which is a factor in baseball highlights. That's not a factor. We'll talk about that in gameplay. What type of card it is, very important. Robot, cyborg, natural. Offensive ability or defensive ability. And for some of the newer cards, especially promos, sometimes both. Hits threatened and speed of the runner and whether it has a pinch hit ability or not, and the set number. So a little less information to try and juggle, right? I will certainly give them that. Oh, but Sean, it does just break my heart. And I showed this to Abby too. And Abby's reaction was, oh yeah, it's easily the baseball highlights cards. For one, let's just talk about the banner. The baseball highlights one has a lovely little banner, kind of a pennant with the team name on the top. That's a nice little stylistic flair. I looked through the decks of cards, and because it's design, but it's also art. The art on the cards, there's a lot of, so I will say this, coming from a publishing background, art is a huge expense, and there are a ton of cards in this box. Right. It is not uncommon to have a company, have an artist charge somewhere between $25, $30, $50 per piece. You multiply that by all of the cards in this box, it's a nightmare. But baseball highlights in its starter teams tend to be kind of group pictures, right? You have a bunch of people kind of side by side. Hey, there's some robots. Hey, it looks like a team photo because they're generic players. It's a rookie or it's a veteran. On a lot of these cards, starter cards and otherwise, there are a lot of characters on these. And the free agent cards in baseball highlights often focus on one single or solitary figure, right? It's just focusing on this robot or this batter. Most of the cards, interestingly enough, I thought, oh, do these cards have backgrounds? Is that why? Do the baseball highlights cards have backgrounds that the football highlights ones don't? Is that why I don't like the art so much? And it turns out some of the cards in baseball highlights do have lovely backgrounds on them. Oftentimes, from looking through, just a cursory look through my own set, it tends to be more robots, but most of them have no background at all. But in a majority of cases, they all are featuring one player in an action pose, a pitcher winding up, a batter in full swing, a guy sitting on a bench, a robot with a bat. Like, you just have all of these different kind of evocative, and they feel like baseball cards. They feel like collectible baseball cards.
Oh, yeah.
Poses that you would have.
You're right.
I didn't collect football cards necessarily, but I'm going to take a quick moment here because I have my football highlights set open. And I'm going to just pull out a random set of kind of free agent cards and look through and kind of talk through what I'm seeing. So we have Mel Harris. Mel Harris featured with 3 other people. And there's this one's one of the better ones. There's, they're holding a football. Someone's trying to strip it. You have Billy Joe Knoll. Again, 3 people kind of running to the right. Someone's blocking somewhere else. This one, Chuck Cowher. It looks like someone kind of hitting a quarterback. Bernie Bradshaw, a nice solo isolated one. Jack Green, a bit of a wider shot, making a catch. But there's more of these kind of group poses. This one here, Jesse Gonzalez, is 5 people on the same card. Yeah. And you'll have that with some of these baseball cards too, kind of, but the vast majority seem to be focused on just one person doing just one cool action. Bryce Bronze, for instance, He has a magnet glove canceling 2 hits, and you see him, sure enough, robbing a home run at the wall. It's evocative. It's tied into theme, and we'll talk much more about theme later. But some of this art, in looking at it closely too, just looks kind of unfinished, for lack of a better word. It just doesn't speak to me in the same way. And this will be another thing I'll say in theme a little bit later on. The cover, even from the cover of this game, the cover of Baseball Highlights 2045 is a robot with a bat. That immediately gets you thinking, oh, futuristic, interesting. This game has robot baseball. There's something intriguing about that. The cover of this game has a dude in a leather helmet. A dude in it looks like it could be 1920s football,
right,
versus futuristic football. There's no part of this box cover, other than the fact that it says 2052, that really would tell me that this is occurring in 2052. It just doesn't evoke that for me.
Agreed.
And so we'll talk about this more in theme, because I think it speaks to a deeper issue. But yeah, there's just a lot of info, and the trick of having these cards that rotate, Sean, is it's hard to read in your hand in a lot of cases, right? Yes. I'm trying to read both the defensive play, the offensive play. When I'm drafting these cards, it's an overload of information. So it hinders the game in a fundamental way. Until you've gotten a couple plays under your belt, it's hard to parse through what exactly is going on with a card. And the game encourages you to think about both the offense and defense you're playing, which is great. Do you think, Sean, if all that information was at the top of the card or the bottom of the card, that this could have maybe worked better?
Yeah, it could be, because the hard part is when you have it in your hand, right? Typically you're splaying the cards out in a fan style. And so you could see all of the offensive plays or all of the defensive plays, depending on which way you orient them, but you're constantly having to maneuver to make sure that you're seeing everything. And exact same analysis as far as, yeah, there's so much information. It's so hard to evaluate. And it just, because of all of that, the cards had to be more functional looking than evocative of any sort of feeling or narrative or theme or anything like that. They had to be so functional. Yeah. Even down to the use of color for the type of plays. So passes are blue, runs are brown, and mauls are pink. And for whatever reason, and they do something similar in Baseball Highlights, but for whatever reason, something is very off-putting. Maybe it's because the border on the cards is green, whereas the border on the Baseball Highlights cards is black. So it kind of it ties it all together. But then when you've got the green of the border and the pink or the blue or the brown, and then the colors of the uniforms, and then possibly it's a blue pass defense, but it's a brown offense, a brown running offense. It just seemed super busy and just an overload of visual information.
I think the idea of spinning a card is really, it's a good idea. But I think functionally, if we're trying to evaluate what's in your hand at a quick glance, it gets in the way. And I don't know if this would work as well. This could absolutely be a terrible solution. But it feels like if you put everything right side up at the top of the card,
right,
it might be a really crowded top of the card with art at the bottom. I don't know what that would ultimately look like or what the best option would be. But this doesn't feel like the best option.
Yeah.
And again, it's ambitious how much stuff is being put on these cards. It's really ambitious. There's a ton of information, and it's all in service of this elegant game. Baseball Highlights was much the same way, right? You have both your offense and defense on the same card. You have a ton of info on that card too, not quite as much, but there's just something that's a lot more elegant about those cards. There's one other really big problem. Really, to me, I can't believe they did this. The action cards and the play cards look from a distance, not even that far of a distance, identical. They aren't identical. You have different, slightly different backgrounds. There's X's and O's. You have people going for a catch. You have different poses of things. But if they had just made the background of this card blue or red or something else, I would have, I don't know. It was something that was a big pet peeve for me, that the play cards and the action cards were so similar.
Sure.
Is that something you noticed too, Sean?
Yeah, I did. And I was like, that's weird. Yeah, it's a little annoying.
Yeah. So I think ultimately it much like the rule book kind of lets the game down a little bit. The art components, graphic design, and the rule book as well. So, yeah, I don't think there's much more to say on that. Components really solid, as we mentioned. Gameplay, Sean.
Okay.
I'm very curious about your gameplay thoughts on this one.
Yeah. All right. So I would say gameplay is something that I did enjoy quite a bit. So that's good. And really, in theory, that's really what you should care about. Everything else is there in service of the gameplay. And hopefully you have those other elements that do serve the gameplay. But no, I like the gameplay quite a bit. And I think that at first glance, it can seem simplistic at first glance.
Yes.
Right. And I think that's not accurate. It is in no way a simplistic game. You know, and I would hear this from people I played with, because I played with a bunch of, in fact, almost everyone I played had only played it the one time and I was teaching them. And at first they were just kind of like, all right, there's not much to this. I play this card, you play this card. But then eventually the strategy would come through, the planning would come through, the strategic use of audibles would come through. There's a sort of, there's an ebb and flow to the game. There's a bit of a, you're feinting. You're trying to get someone to overcommit to a particular type of defense. You set something up and I've sprung this trap on you because I have the perfect audible to actually, get the last 10 yards in. So it's interesting, and it was quite good, and I enjoyed it quite a bit. And having played games like Blood Bowl, which is not, it's less on a scale of simulation to abstraction. Blood Bowl let me say Team Manager, because it's a card game. Blood Bowl Team Manager is much more of an abstraction than this is. And then having an old game from the 70s like Pay Dirt, which is an absolute simulation, it was interesting. This felt in a lot of ways like Pay Dirt, because you would set up your offense, the defense would set up their defense, and then there's a die roll to see what happens, and you consult charts and things like that. But it felt very similar, but this is a much more accessible version of Pay Dirt. But overall, no, I enjoyed it, and I came to enjoy that interplay and the use of the audibles, like the audible play is huge. It's absolutely huge. In fact, I played one game of it with Rory, and I said, you know what, Rory, for the first half, let's not talk about the audibles, because I just want you to see the flow of the game. And it contributed to just a bad first impression for Rory.
Yep.
Because it did seem kind of simplistic in that sense. So the audibles are absolutely key.
I agree. I think it's the most interesting part of the gameplay of this is the audibles of balancing that timing of how do I get the best effect out of this? Do I have a nice sneak offensive play that can just get me a free touchdown? Do I save those for the very end of the half when I might need them, but give up a big points in the process? So yeah, really the audible system in this is really interesting. And I will say this, Sean, for whatever reason, this game had a hard time lending itself to a good first impression. Yeah, I agree. But the more you play it, the more the intricacies and the interesting parts of this really come to bear. Especially, the game suggests for your first play, and I get why they do this, that you don't play with a draft, that you just play with the 15 starter teams and 15 card of a team and play against them one and go from there. The draft really for me makes this. You get some really interesting decisions that can emerge out of that. Do I lean more run heavy? What's my opponent doing? What do they likely have? Can I stop them? It's an overwhelming draft for a first play because, again, you're evaluating both the offensive, the defensive parts of the card, trying to balance out when you need things you might not need offense in a sense. You might prioritize defense and just try and kind of hold on. The games themselves, though, Sean, I've found more often than not tended to be really intense and close.
Yeah.
Something that I love in Baseball Highlights 2045 is that so many of these games can have great finishes. It makes it a great spectator game for that reason. And Football Highlights is much the same way. It has some really tense endings. I just played, as my final play of this, I played solo. And I should say, before I get into this story, the solo play is really well done in this. Did you get a chance to play this solo, Sean?
Did not play the solo.
So it comes with a 25-card solo deck. And much like Baseball Highlights 2045, it has a very simple solo execution to it. There aren't a ton of complicated rules or complicated setup. You have a 25-card play deck for the AI. It flips over up the top card of the deck and does whatever that top card is and then spins. It can't audible, but those plays that they have are super powerful. This was looked like to be the first blowout game I'd experienced, and my second solo play of this. I played back-to-back. I was leading 35-17 with 3 cards left in the second half. And they scored touchdown, touchdown, touchdown because I burned through all my audibles and I didn't have anything I could do to really adjust on the fly or stop them. I got a field goal out of it, and we ended up going to overtime, which, much like in Baseball Highlights, is satisfying and really intense. Did you have any games that went to overtime, Sean?
We had none. We had so many games that were down to a point. But yeah, never went to overtime, surprisingly.
Overtime's great. So we didn't talk about this in the rules, but basically it works similar to Baseball Highlights 2045 in that you select a play simultaneously, and then your defense applies to their offense, and their offense applies, or you get it. The defenses and offenses apply to each other, and then you see if anyone scored a touchdown from the 30-yard line. If not, you play the next card out of your hand. You have 3 cards to start. And then you keep going until you can't win on a field goal. The game must be won on a touchdown. So first person to score a touchdown when someone else hasn't wins the game. Really great system. Again, lends itself to tense, exciting, interesting play. So I think that's all really well done. What I miss in this game that's there in Baseball Highlights is the team building. Although there's the drafts at the start of the game and at halftime to make kind of second half adjustments, the revenue tension that you have in Baseball Highlights just isn't present in this. There are some games of Baseball Highlights where you just kind of give up and just make as much money as you can because you want to afford a specific free agent or someone really nice. This game doesn't have that. The team you have is the team you have. Revenue is not a factor in this, and boy, heaven forbid, because I don't think they could fit that on the card.
Yeah.
But it's something I miss. It's a big aspect of football or of Baseball Highlights that isn't present here. It isn't present for a reason. Baseball, is played in a best-of-7 World Series. Football is played in a winner-take-all Super Bowl. It's just kind of the nature of the game. So I get why it's not there, but I just didn't find the deck building or team building elements of this quite as interesting as I did in baseball. It was something that I was a little bit bummed out about. But in terms of entertainment value, the games often were entertaining, tense. The audible system is great, and there's a lot of really good here. I think it's the biggest strength of the game easily is gameplay, and it doesn't completely make up for some of the shortfalls and the art components and I'll kind of tip my hand here, theme side of things. Mm-hmm. But it is a really positive part of the game. This system works great with football, and it's brilliantly done, not unexpectedly, brilliantly done and brilliantly adjusted into football. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't have a ton of complaints about that. I thought Mike did a fantastic job with the game system itself. It's satisfying, great card play.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it's one of the big things with real football is so much the game is about clock management,
mm-hmm.
and I think this replicates that to a certain degree, right? Maybe not exactly. It's not a one-to-one thing, but how you were talking about, how am I using these cards and when?
Right.
You could look at your cards and just be like, oh, if I take all of the yardage, I just add it up. If everything goes well, I should score this many points. Well, you don't know. You don't know. For example, there are times when someone's like, I'm just going to let you. It's a 15-yard gain. You could have it because I'm going to set this up, and I'm pretty sure you're not going to have this offensive or a defense for this particular offensive play. And so much of watching the scores and all right, well, maybe it's third down, and it's late in the half. And if I try and go for a fourth down, I might make it, but I might not. And so maybe I just need to kick the field goal now in order to have enough cards for a whole nother drive.
Right.
And I think that can be an important decision.
Well, and there's also cards that can end a drive cold. So you might be in
Right.
position to get points, but aren't quite sure if you're going to be able to get in on the next play. And you know your opponent has an end drive or a pick six type of play. You might want to kick a field goal a little early,
Right.
Just to make sure you get something out of a drive.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that just kind of like you mentioned, as you play the game more, there is this sort of emergent gameplay that comes out. And what I will say is similarly to what you said with that draft, man, it is hard. It is so I've only played this 4 times. Compare this to Marvel Champions, which I played 30 times before the review. This I only played 4 times, and part of it was because it was unsatisfying for the new players I was playing with, because it didn't lend itself to a first impression. And I was really enjoying as the strategy was really coming out of the gameplay, and just the way it worked out, I didn't really have an opportunity to play repeat games with people. It's hard to play a 2-player game a bunch in preparation for a review at Empire, because you're typically leaving people out but anyway, and so people were kind of like, and it was disheartening, because I'm like, no, this is better than you think it is right now. And boy, I wish we could have an opportunity to play some more games of this, so you can kind of see what emerges from it.
Right. Yeah, and there's a ton of abilities in here right off the bat, so there's some interesting strategy you can kind of build around different things. The teams themselves, and I'll talk about this a little more in theme, feel like they're NFL counterparts, for lack of a better word, or sort of the identities those teams have built up. And so that tends to be really cool. If you get a player from Pittsburgh, they're going to tend to be, I'm jumping the gun here. Never mind, we'll get there. So
okay.
Yeah.
What was also a nice touch was that if you have excess yardage on a run, in other words, it takes you past the end zone, well, that's fine because you just run into the end zone. But if you have excess yardage in a pass that would take you past the end zone, well, that's an incomplete pass. But there are modifiers to certain pass plays, either from the action deck or from some of the abilities, that are RACs, run after catch.
Yep.
Right. So you could still, catch it at the 10-yard line and then run in for an extra 10 yards. So that was pretty interesting. But what did you think, Alex, about the randomness of the action deck?
I like it.
Yeah.
I have no issue with it. I think a little randomness can go a long way in a game, especially a sports game. Part of what makes Blood Bowl so satisfying is a moment like, and we've talked about this a couple of times, the moment where I got incredibly lucky. The 4 in 100 chance, or whatever we calculated this, it was absurd. And you just came up snake eyes in that situation. Your guy tripped at the goal line. That's sports. Sports is sometimes you might have a better team, but you might not end up winning the day. I like the action deck. I like how it resolved. I like how sometimes it's a penalty on you, sometimes it's on the defense. Sometimes the run after catch is small, and so you have a mismatch and you kind of get away with it. And sometimes it's an immediate touchdown. And oops, maybe I should have matched up on that play. So I don't know. I tended to like it, but I could see it being annoying for some players.
For the record, I was 97.2 repeating % chance to win on that die roll.
But then you didn't.
Yeah. So there was one game I had, which was kind of off-putting. Not so much for me, but for, I think it was Matthew. Yeah, it was Matthew.
Wait, did Matthew Ward play this game?
He did.
Why?
He likes baseball highlights quite a bit.
Oh, does he? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
It's just the action deck I could see specifically not being a thing he would like.
Yeah. And the worst part was we had, so the runs range from 5 to 50. Or sorry, the runs and passes, the modifiers range from 5 to 50, right? And there's 150, and most of them are like 5, 10, 15 yards. There's a handful of 20, 25, whatever. But most of them are lower end. And we had back-to-back a 50-yard run modifier and a 50-yard pass modifier.
Wow.
And it felt weird.
Sure.
So you know what I mean? So
can see that.
I get that. But for the most part, I don't have a problem with the action deck. I kind of like it. I like the fact that there's a risk. Man, this is a really good offensive play, but it might get me an injury for this particular player, which
Right.
gets rid of the card. But most of the injuries are blank when you flip the action deck over. But every now and then there might be something. Same thing with penalties. I like that.
Yeah, and that random element is there, but for the most part, you're kind of controlling the randomness, for lack of a better word.
Right.
That if there's a mismatch that puts you susceptible to a huge run after the catch, it's because you didn't match up on the play.
Right. And part of that's up to you, right? Obviously, if your opponent's on the 45 and you decide to mismatch, well, you're kind of leaving yourself open there. But if they're on the 5 or 10 yard line, and it's fine. I don't think I have what I need to really stop this score. I'd rather set myself up for this offensive play. That's part of. It's an interesting decision.
Yeah, and there are a lot of them in here, and so yeah, I think as a system, it's really successful. So yeah, anything else on gameplay?
I think it is the strongest aspect of the entire game, which is good. Hey, let's talk about theme.
Oh boy. Okay, I'm curious if you're on the same page of this as me.
I think so. I'm picking up what you're laying down, Alex. And basically, you're saying that there is nothing about this game that is 2052.
It's not nothing, because
Very
technically
little.
speaking, the action deck has a robot on it.
Yeah.
The refereeing system as the background, and I read through the backstory of the game. It references, it's the future. Football was declining. They came up with better technology to prevent head injuries. That's a good thing. There's no. It's still just played by humans, but it's refereed by Wiffle and a bunch of other things, and it's referenced baseball highlights. I don't know why. I don't understand why there wasn't the potential for including robots in some form. If you had I would prefer it to be everyone robots than no one robots.
So here's the interesting thing about baseball highlights from a thematic perspective, right?
Yeah.
It's this juxtaposition of the old-timey look with the robots, cyborgs, and humans.
It's fantastic.
Right? It's great.
Oh, fantastically thematic.
And so this has that old-timey look because they're using the old-timey gear because technology's gotten better or whatever. And so there are humans, and yeah, I guess there are technically cyborgs because they have some sort of mechanical parts. But as far as like a class of card, you don't have that. I mean, rock, paper, scissors isn't the right word for robot, cyborg.
Yeah, not quite.
Human.
Right.
But kind of felt that way, sort of.
Sort of. I mean, there's not one that beats the other, and certain yeah.
But you were able to, I'm gonna build a robot deck, and I see that you're building a robot deck, so I need to make sure I get some anti-robot cards.
Yep.
I didn't quite feel that as much, and maybe that will change with more plays. But thematically, that was kind of a letdown. It didn't feel futuristic enough.
It didn't feel futuristic, quite frankly, at all. Other than the fact that there's a robot on the action card, it felt, if anything, really old school, not remotely futuristic. And I think it's a huge letdown for me, because baseball highlights, I love the theme of that game. I love this concept of a natural struggling in a robot world. This big beefy guy who's done his best to hang on as long as possible, but it's a new era, it's a new world, and it's just not quite. They're hanging on. They're fan favorites, so the revenue for those cards tends to be a little higher, but it's just not great. But hey, they're good defensively, so they haven't been completely replaced. Robots can't typically play defense very well, so they have some sort of role. And then you have robots, which are they're hitting machines, and they look really cool in a lot of cases. Some of them are old-timey robots. Some of them are these big beefy sluggers, different models. You have cyborgs, which are this nice blend between the two. You feel the theme with the game. And from cover to execution, other than the fact that they've sort of changed the rules, there's not much. With baseball, there was this great justification of, hey, the game was boring, which In a lot of cases on TV, especially, it is. So they shorten it to 6 innings. Great justification for the six card mechanic. There's no really such justification here. Sort of, they incorporated rugby to make things more interesting with the mall style play, but I think it's a huge fail in the game, honestly.
And what's interesting is, and to give Mike some credit, I could see him designing this so that it's kind of beat for beat baseball highlights with little changes from it, because it's the tried and true thing, go with what works. And then we'd be complaining that, oh, there's not enough different about this game. It's kind of like when you remake or reboot a movie, if you change too much, hey, it's not enough like the original. And then if you don't change enough, it's like, oh, it's just a rehash of, Force Awakens is just a rehash of A New Hope. Yeah. So, I mean, I think that there's definitely a tightrope for a designer to walk there. But like, I don't know, I felt like that was part of the world. And I don't see why you couldn't have human cyborgs and robots. In fact, I would have gone so far as to add aliens.
Oh, that would be interesting.
Add a fourth, because why not? It's the sequel, so you gotta top the first movie.
I mean, but even if you don't have those kind of things, like if you had robots and humans at different positions, and it didn't have any gameplay feel to it, like the gameplay part of it did not matter if that wasn't a factor. I at least it would have been incorporated in the art or the feel or something of this. Now, I'll say this is a good thing. Much like baseball highlights, there are great nods. There are players with names that are kind of tributes or combinations of existing players. If you look in the AI deck, there is Alex Ramirez.
Ooh,
I wonder who those people are. And there's also a Shaban, I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, Goldsmith. And I don't know if there's a Sean something. Oh, maybe that's what that was. Oh, it is Sean. Oh, I get it now. Oops.
Oh, is there?
So it's spelled Siobhan, but I think it's pronounced Sean.
Huh.
I don't know. Maybe not.
I totally missed that.
So maybe it's like Sean Goldsmith, but kind of a subtler Sean Goldsmith.
Yeah.
So that's nice. They've incorporated names from football legends from various teams. And I'll say here's a couple of other things. As mentioned briefly during gameplay, the teams feel like the teams. The Steelers have the steel curtain defense, and they have. If you know football, there are things you're going to pick up that are well done and interesting. The teams feel like the teams, and I think that's incredibly cool. You also, though, another positive thing, you have great female representation in this. It's something that they had in baseball highlights. Mm-hmm. You have some female characters. I think that's pretty cool. But from an overall thematic perspective, the story isn't as engaging. It's not as well incorporated, and it bummed me out. It really bummed me out. I think it was a missed opportunity. I think there was ways you could have done it through even just the art alone that would have had it work. And I'll put it this way: as far as the story of the game goes, I don't buy it. Baseball highlights, I bought. This one, makes me sad to talk about. So that's... Oh, yeah, we have the guild.
We sure do.
We do have the guild. Tim Tix with some long thoughts on this one. He says, I prefer deck building over drafting. I guess I'll only play football highlights with the pre-built decks. The halftime draft is good for me. I don't need a 10-card draft AP even before the match starts. Yeah, let's go back to a thought on this. There can definitely be some AP because, again, there's a lot of information on these cards. I didn't find it to be a huge issue in plays, but I could see with the wrong player it being a big issue. I played football highlights twice solo and twice against an opponent. I still think it's not intuitive how an offense is resolved. When baseball highlights was new, you had to understand immediate and threatened actions. But now this seems easier to execute than football highlights card scrimmage. The action deck puts a huge factor of randomness into the game that baseball highlights doesn't have. I guess you have to deal with that. I'm leaning toward that baseball highlights is the, quote, better game in terms of its flow and feel, but football highlights is undoubtedly a ton of fun, and that should be the bottom line. Even if, and also just because, you can lose a game due to a scoop 6 here and some additional run-after-catch yardage there. I also have to say football highlights' visual appeal is just awful. The stark colors, the unfinished art, and the metal sheen that I didn't mind in baseball highlights also looks cheap here. I absolutely like that they put so many female characters into the game. Barb Favre is the greatest of all time. And then BJ from Board Game Gumbo with kind of a quick thought. I've played it solo, but I imagine that just like its big brother, the game will be better with other people and even better still with some kind of organized draft or tourney play. Yeah, I would agree with that. I think, again, as we talked about with gameplay, this is a game that probably will, in a lot of cases, leave a bad first impression. But the more you play it, the more its depth is revealed to you, and the more the things running under the hood and some of the interesting parts of this come into play. So, yeah. Sean, do you want to go first on final thoughts and rating?
Yeah, let's have me go first. I think there's a little more drama with your score. So
Sure.
we'll save that. So we rate things here at the Dukes of Dice on a 6-point scale. 1 is poorly designed but playable, not necessarily fun. 6 is an all-time favorite. There's a contender for the top 10. And it sounds like for both of us, Alex, that some of the problems, the theme, the art, the graphic design, might wind up costing this game at least a full point.
Yeah.
At least. And so I think about this game and man, I kind of wish we had waited another month or two on the review because I'm curious to see how this game is going to catch on at Empire. Baseball Highlights is a favorite of a lot of people at Empire. We've had great tournaments there. Man, it's just caught on. I mean, hugely caught on. We're a little bit early in terms of the availability of this game. There's a couple people that have Kickstarted at the shop that haven't gotten their copy yet. And so I'm curious to see, is this going to have the same reception that Baseball Highlights had? And like you mentioned, there's been some initial, poo-pooing of the game, for lack of a better term. And but I will say that people have said, I'll play it again because I'm curious to see if more of this emerges. And for me, someone who has played it 4 times, it absolutely has. So I'm excited for more games. So where this is going to wind up right now, it's not going to be a 6, obviously. It's not going to be a 5. A 5 is a great game. We'll rarely turn down a play of it. Because part of it is I need my opponent to really be enjoying themselves.
Sure.
Especially in a 2-player game, so it's going to settle at a 4. And a 4 is a good game, worth playing, just not all the time, belongs in the Duchy. And I don't know, this isn't the type of game I would want to play solo. So a lot of this is going to depend whether this stays where it's at, goes up, goes down, is going to depend on whether or not I'm going to have players to play with. And then the next question is, well, am I going to pull this out over Baseball Highlights? I don't know. I just don't know yet. So I'm going to give this a 4, but I would like to, before the double take, I'd like to weigh back in after it's had a chance to be out in the wild, so to speak, at Empire and see if a little bit more excitement's been generated, which would have an effect on my perception of the game because there is a subjective element there, obviously. So a 4. Good game, worth playing just not all the time, belongs in the Duchy. All right, you're up. I'm curious. I'm very curious where this winds up for you.
I think you probably know, though, from the discussion.
So.
Yeah, I think you probably do. As we talked about, rulebook holds the game back. Artwork and graphic design holds the game back. Theme holds the game back. But the gameplay itself is really solid and evocative of this system. It's a great implementation of football in this highlight system, this simultaneous offense and defense. It's really well done, brilliant at times in terms of its execution. Games are tense. Games are fun. It doesn't have quite the high heights for me of Baseball Highlights 2045, but it's a really solid addition gameplay-wise into this series. So I enjoy it from that standpoint. And there's a lot of caveats. There's a lot of asterisks with that. I think, as you mentioned, the enjoyment of other people and who I can get a chance to play this with is going to be a thing. Part of baseball is Baseball Highlights is from its cover to its cards, it intrigues, especially if you're a baseball fan, but even if you're not, it plays fantastically. The look of this game, I'm worried, could drive some people away and make it harder to play. I think if I've played this in a tournament at a convention, if I've played it with more people and there's enjoyment of it, I think this has a chance to certainly hold its own. It's not gonna soar to the same heights as Baseball Highlights. if only because it's again, a lot of the areas are a bit of a letdown. But let me go back to another. I'm so tangled up on this one, Sean. There's so many emotions that are flooding into me. I don't
Sure.
have the same kind of Dragon Island level regrets, but I mean, I've been a little harsh, and as mentioned, some of that is just the expectations of this is my favorite game of all time. It's something I'm very passionate about. Is a reason that this comes up as much. I will say this in terms of the situation where you might pull this out over baseball, is it is a faster game. You can play through a game of this in a shorter span of time than baseball highlights. That would be a reason to possibly pull this out over something else. So in any case, where do I fall on this? I'm the exact same place as Sean. I think we're on the same page with this one altogether. It is a 4. It's a good game, worth playing just not all the time, belongs in the Duchy. I'm not seeking to get rid of my copy anytime soon. It's not happening. It's a worthy addition into the highlights line. But there's so many missed opportunities, and it just makes me a little sad on that front. But yeah, that's where I stand, Sean. I don't know. It would be tough to see it going much higher than that too.
So, Mike, when you start designing badminton highlights 2064,
right,
just include aliens. That's all I want.
Aliens. You just want aliens. Okay.
Yeah.
What sport would lend itself best to aliens? Because it's not badminton.
How do you know? Maybe that's like over on Tau Ceti. That's like their bag.
I would think tennis would come before badminton anyway.
Well, that's just a lack of imagination on your part, Alex.
What about pickleball? What about pickleball highlights?
Yeah, let's do that. Let's do foosball highlights.
Dodgeball might lend itself well. You're kind of playing offense and defense at the same time there. I don't know. But anyway, that's our very in-depth review of Football Highlights 2052. A 4 for Sean and a 4 as well for me.
You are listening to the Dukes of Dice, proud members of the Dice Tower Network. For other great shows in the network, check out dicetowernetwork.com. Back to Alex and Sean for this week's Dukes Double Take.
All right, now that the hard part's over, easier part. We're looking back on our Dukes Double Take this week on episode 190 of Root of All Eagles, where we're talking about, well, Root. A game that has gotten a couple of expansions now, is sort of become a staple for a lot of people. At the time, Sean, I gave this one a low 4, and I said, unless I sell it for a good amount of money, I don't think I'm getting rid of this anytime soon. Spoiler, I sold it for a decent amount of money.
All right.
Now, let me pause here for a moment, because I also I don't want to pat myself too hard on the back, because much like Zombicide, I had a selling fail moment where I forgot to have shipping listed on my BGG Market listing.
Boy.
And so I sold the game for $9, thinking it would fit into a flat rate box. It did not fit into a flat rate box, so I had to pay $1.99 for the box and then another $9 for shipping. So I sold the game at a $2 loss.
Okay.
Not the best thing I've ever done. Anyway, the rest of my thoughts on Root. I said the variability and asymmetricality of the game would hurt it in the long term, but short term, but help it in the long term. It's a hard game to get into, but I thought at the time the more I would play of it, the more I was likely to enjoy. Sean, you gave this one a 5. You said it's super solid. It passes the test of would I rather be playing this or a coin game? And you said for what it is, it's relatively accessible, and that's a really positive note. So, Sean, have you played this game since?
Played it one time since, and let me just clarify that. It's not would I rather play this than a coin game. It's do I finish a game of Root and be like, man, that didn't quite scratch the itch of a coin game. Because I've had like an 18xx light game where I'm like, nah, I'd rather play a full blown 18xx. And so yeah, so I played it one time since, but it's always been at the top of my mind. I think it is solid. I've played several coin games since then. And while I prefer most of the coin games because there is a lot more complexity and depth, I still think it's really solid. Does it stay at a 5? A 5 is a great game. Will rarely turn down a play of it. Oh, and by the way, we should probably mention for those that aren't familiar with it, it is, as you kind of mentioned, an asymmetrical war game. Coin is short for counterinsurgency. You have these sort of governmental factions, and then you have these insurgent factions, and there's a little bit of an area control element. There's a little bit of you're trying to all attack the leader. So it's the 3 of you against one person for a while. until you've beat them down, and then one of the three has risen up in power, and so now everyone's teaming up on them. It's a really interesting, attack the leader. Okay, I've stalled. Why don't you tell me what you think, and I'll think about it, Alex. I'm struggling. I'm leaning towards dropping it to a 4.
I sold it. It's a 3.
It's a 3. Yeah.
Here's the thing with it. It is a game, and the Guild thought to address this in some part. It is a game that is very, very hard to get to the table because you have to teach so many different sets of rules, it feels like. So I know for you had mentioned it's kind of relatively accessible. For me, it's tricky to have enough people willing to sit down, willing to learn it. If I played with people who had some degree of experience, I don't know. I need a refresher myself at this point. It's just hard to get it to the table. So I think it's better than that score. I think it's better than a 3, honestly. But because of how difficult it is to get to the table, I can't have it any higher than that. It's a game I've outright sold. I didn't care enough about it to have access to it. But I get why people love this game. The theme is really well done. The asymmetricality is fascinating. It does have a less favorite mechanic. This is something that Josh from Gray Fox Games would talk about. Negative timing, which is where you kind of have to focus your game on stopping the other person from winning in a lot of cases. That doesn't tend to be a favorite mechanic of mine. And it's a big part of the play here. But yeah, I enjoy Root, and I might play it at convention if asked, but I don't care about owning it. And if I never play it again, I don't think it'll be the end of the world. So I don't know. That's where I am with that one, Sean. What about you? Did you organize your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm going to drop it down to a 4. A high 4, Alex. So again, a 4 is a good game, worth playing just on all the time, belongs in the duchy. High 4.
High 4. All right, fair enough. Guild had a ton of thoughts on this. Steve Paltrineri says, it just didn't do it for me. I'm all for asymmetry in games, but this was a little too much. Both times I played, I spent half the game developing a strategy only to have it be completely ruined by some special ability some other player had that I had no idea about. Very frustrating. Also, I'm just not a fan of the art. Everyone seems to love it, but it doesn't do it for me. I acknowledge that there is probably a quality game here, since my opinion is in the minority. I could see how, if you had a regular group of people to play with weekly, that this might be a good one in that situation. But I just didn't have fun playing it, so I have no desire to explore it further. A Ducal 2 for me.
Ooh. And then Chris McGowan said, I suspected this game would be great if you could get 4 players committed to playing it regularly. It is not a legacy game, but is a game that rewards repeated plays and is likely best with players of equal skill or understanding of all 4 races. I did not locate such a group that wanted to play repeatedly. There are so many games fighting for the same game playing hours available that this type of game likely never had a chance with me. Mechanically, it's fine. I like the idea of asymmetrical player powers. I just don't have the time and group to make this happen. I am not curious to revisit this to see the 5 to 6 player expansions.
Now, on the flip side of the coin, Adam Dalton says, Root was my number 1 game from last year, and I still love it. I've played the base game only about 10 times, many of those with the same 6 or 7 core group of players. This has resulted in the game getting even better for us because not only do we know our own faction, but we know what to watch out for in everyone else's factions. My self-imposed buying limits meant no expansion for me, but I'd love to get it eventually and play even more. A 6 on the Ducal scale. And I will say, I don't think he's wrong. If you have a regular group of people to play this one with, and everyone kind of knows the intricacies and you've played it regularly, I could absolutely see this being as high as a 5, maybe even for me, on the Ducal scale.
Interesting.
But I don't have that group necessarily. I don't have that interest necessarily, and it just makes it, if it isn't quite accessible enough for me to want to come back to it enough. So anyway, I totally get where you're coming from, Adam.
And then finally, John Soleil says, I haven't played many asymmetric games, really just Root and both vast games. I like Root quite a bit more than the other 2. For what it is, I think that it was really easy to learn and to understand the interactions between the different players. I find the player interactions really interesting. Most games are really boring when it's not my turn, but with Root, I really enjoy watching the dynamics of everyone building up and keeping each other in check.
So yeah, that's our look back at Root. Drops for both of us. Sean takes it from a 5 to a 4. I take it from a low 4 to a high 3. wrap things up, though, Sean, we have a little bit of unfinished business. The best of the rest, and I will say this was a fantastic fantastic week for episode names, I thought. A lot of really solid ones. Sometimes, the top 6, you scrape a little bit. Not every week's a great week. This week is a fantastic week. We had to turn some away that would normally be easily in the top 6. So, well done, Guild. Keep up the good work. First up, Jimmy DM90 with Hold the Line, referencing kind of holding the line in Root where you're trying to keep someone from winning, and then holding the line in football, referencing offensive and defensive line play.
Matthew S. suggested Furball Highlights 2052. That's Furball. Bringing into mind all of the furry woodland creatures from Root, and feathered creatures, I suppose.
Yep.
But there's a parenthetical here. Was this an alternate name, Alex, or?
There were 2 of them that I liked.
Okay.
And this one I thought was clever too. And it's just Furs Down and Talon, trying to reference first down and 10 in football, which I thought, nicely done. Tim Tix with kind of my sneaky favorite for this week, Wildcat Offense, which if you know football will make a heck of a lot more sense. In football, there's a specific type of offense where you basically put a running back at quarterback, and it's snapped directly to the running back, and oftentimes it's some sort of running play from it. It's the Wildcat Offense, and referencing the woodland creatures and wildcats, and I don't think there's actually... Is there a wildcat race in Root?
There's... the cats.
Well, they're the cats. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that works enough. Well, no.
Sure.
Clever name. Really clever name. Referencing football and Root.
And then John Soleil suggested Love at First Down, a play on Love at First Sight. Doesn't have anything to do with Root, but Alex's engagement. Yeah. Speaking of Alex, we should do a double ducal wedding.
Oh, that would be interesting. When is your wedding coming up? Because you've been engaged for a chunk of time now.
Like 15 years. No, we're thinking it's going to be June, July.
Okay.
Which may interact in a weird way with Sean Con.
I haven't gotten my save the date yet.
No, we haven't sent them out yet.
Okay, well, kind of coming up on that point, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know much about wedding planning.
End of the year is when they'll probably go out.
Oh, okay, good. All right. Mine is looking sometime in the fall next year or spring the year after, I think.
Okay.
A shorter engagement length. All right, and then Don Gilstrap, my favorite person ever, came with Root for the home team. I'm going to double check and make sure that's actually Don Gilstrap. I hope it is. But yeah, referencing more baseball than football, but still a sports reference enough to fit the bill. And of course, Root, the game Root. So really solid job. Don, you continue to impress and amaze. You are my favorite person of all time. Thank you.
Way to go, Don.
Yep. And then this wasn't part of the top 6, but it was absolutely hilarious, I thought. So it was set up by Paul G. Sean, you're going to be playing the role of Football Highlights 2052 in this scene. Okay. I'll be playing the role of myself. But for some narration, Abby walks back into the...
Hold on.
Oh, you're getting warmed up? Okay.
What's Football Highlights 2052's motivation?
Hopelessly in love with me.
Okay, got it. I got it.
You got it? All right.
Yep.
Abby walks back into the cabin to find Alex whispering with a small deck of cards.
I love you. You complete me. And I just...
Shut up. Just shut up. You had me at first mention. Nice. What's the name of that movie? Why am I blanking on the movie name of that? I've seen this movie.
Jerry Maguire.
Jerry Maguire. I have seen that movie, for the record. Yeah, Jerry Maguire reference. Really funny. I said on the Guild, I wish there was something stronger than a thumb I could have given that, because it was just great. Nicely done. So yeah, that's the episode, Sean.
It sure is, Alex. It sure is. Okay, well, that's going to do it then for us. This has been episode 215, Coin Toss. Thanks again to Baker Mitchell for that awesome title. Until next time, this is Sean.
And also Alex.
And Duke you later, everybody.
Thank you so much for listening to the Dukes of Dice. Today's episode was recorded in the Duchy on December 12th, 2019. Our theme music provided by Carbohydro M from his Prime Legacy album. The Dukes of Dice are a proud member of the Dice Tower Network. For other great board gaming podcasts, check out DicetowerNetwork.com. And for all the latest in the Dutchie, go to DukesOfDice.com. Find us on Twitter at Dukes of Dice. Join in conversations on our Board Game Geek Guild. Find us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks to our sponsors, Arcane Wonders and Game Toppers LLC. You can learn more about Arcane Wonders' fine titles at ArcaneWonders.com and find out all you need to know about Game Toppers at GameToppersLLC.com. We'll see you back here in 2 weeks. Until then, game on.